tell me your name, where you work at, and where you're from?
I'm Natalie Marison.
Tracy Castro.
Martina Mesa Rodriguez.
Gloria Rodriguez.
Abraham Chaparro.
Marissa Simmons.
Natalie Baker.
I work at the U.S. Embassy. I currently very happily serve and staff Ambassador Davis.
Gunner Sergeant of the United States Marine Corps, here as the detachment commander.
I work in HR here at the Doha Embassy.
I work in public affairs.
The U.S. Embassy in Doha in the HR department.
I work in OBO, which is the Overseas Buildings Operations at the new embassy construction site.
The Deputy Chief of Mission here at the U.S. Embassy in Doha.
I am from El Paso, Texas. I was born actually in Los Angeles, California, but raised in Texas.
I was born and raised in Miami, Florida. My parents are from the Dominican Republic.
Honduras, where I'm from.
And I'm from Caracas, Venezuela.
I'm from Los Angeles, California.
My family is from Mexico City.
I'm originally from San Antonio, Texas, but we grew up all around the United States.
Can you share a bit about your Hispanic culture and identity?
Every year, my mother would travel back and forth to Mexico. We would spend 3 months out of our year every year for so many years of my life.
When I was growing up, most of my family is from San Antonio, Texas, and my grandfathers unfortunately passed away when I was a baby, and so I was raised around my grandmothers, my father's mom and my mother's mom.
Outside of our house, we could speak English all we wanted to our friends, but we could never leave the house without reading, speaking, or writing a phrase in Spanish. We were never allowed to lose or forget our Hispanic culture.
Had very deep cultural roots. They had Mexican American roots that were really ingrained in them and their families. And so I remember them cooking for us growing up. They would speak to us in Spanish and English. And so my brother and I grew up with a strong sense of that love and nurturing from our grandmothers.
So we made piñatas, and we were taught to make the piñatas, and just a huge celebration, like a barrio celebration. You had food and tamales and so many Hispanic food. It was crazy just as a kid, and breaking the piñatas, having it fall, the candy everywhere. It was an experience that has stayed with me my whole life.
Even today, when I smell some of the cooking or the fragrances of spices that my grandmothers used to make in the food growing up, it reminds me of my childhood. And so with that, even though I've traveled around the world and we live so far away from home, I carry that with me as a sense of my culture and identity and home.
Hispanic culture to me is Diego Rivera, Frida Kahlo, Cuco Sanchez, the music of mariachis and salsa and just so many variety of music, samba, you name it, it's all in Mexico. The beat of the drums, I mean, even African drums, the music is all in Mexico. You have so much flavor in music, and I say flavor in music because it is. It's flavorable to hear so many different beats, just like we have so many varied cultures in our society.
What does Hispanic Heritage Month mean to you?
I feel like Hispanic Heritage Month comes and I forget it until someone else mentions that, right? That it's here, or that it's that we're in it.
I honestly didn't really celebrate it much until I started working at the Department of State. But I think it's come to mean recognition and awareness for Hispanic Americans and what they've contributed, as well as just recognition of Hispanic culture and a month to celebrate that.
I think if I had to assign a meaning to it, I think it in some ways points to kind of the immigrant story, right? That many Hispanics, first generation like me, have and kind of presents a reminder for us.
I think especially I grew up celebrating Mexican Independence Day, which is September 16th, and at kind of the start of the month.
what it means to be Hispanic, what it means to have brought our culture into right our dreams and moved to the United States. And so I think it's a wonderful reminder. But I love it, but I never anticipate it with time.
What are some of your favorite foods? Can you make those here or get those ingredients in Qatar?
Some of my favorite foods are tajadas, at least in Honduras, where I'm from. Tajadas is basically like a fried banana. It's almost like French fries. People call them as French fries. So in the Caribbean, you might have tostones, which is twice fried, but tajadas are just sliced differently and fried, and you can get them here. Usually I buy Indian bananas, that's what they're called, green Indian bananas, and then you can make
The harina pan, which is the original Venezuelan harina, which is the flour that you make arepas with, and I actually made them for our colleagues here in the embassy, and they're pretty popular actually. You can feel them, they're kind of like it's like a gordita type of round, filled, I don't know if you guys know the name arepa, right? So you fill it either with cheese or meats or different items, but you can definitely make them here locally.
Favorite foods are flautas, the basic tacos also, and enchiladas. I don't make them per se, but my wife makes them. If they're good, I make them.
Pequeños, which is like a rolled dough with cheese inside, and you fry it, and then when you bite on it, it's like melted cheese. It's so good. And what else is there? The black beans with the white rice that everyone loves. It's similar to some of the Mexican ways to make the rice, but it's more the mix of the white rice with the black beans that makes it like all together, like called frijoles,
Which Hispanic figures stand out to you and why?
I mean, I think Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, just because they were so effective at organizing, and they really created a whole movement and organized these people that didn't have a voice and gave them a voice.
Hispanic figures that stand out to me are strong women in the Hispanic community who have become leaders in various fields. I grew up, as I said before, around my grandmothers and very strong women in my family, whether it's my mom, my aunts, my grandmothers.
I think kind of maybe lesser known, but the Mendez family, which was they argued for an end to school discrimination in California before I think it was 8 years before Brown versus the Board of Education. They sued the California courts for an end to a system that existed at the time that required Mexican Americans or Hispanic Americans to go to a different school. So I think their legislation had a direct impact on my family, and so I admire their courage.
When I see other Hispanic women rising through the heights of, if it's Congress or the Supreme Court or doctors, lawyers, professors, I feel a sense of pride in that because I know the kind of resilience that it took and hard work to get to those points. I see them and I know that they had to fight against stereotypes, against people who were doubting their abilities, who probably encouraged them to not work so hard. They had to have ambition and have a vision in order to achieve those roles. And so there are a number of Hispanic women that I see that I want to be like, and that also I would encourage others to aspire to be like.
How does your Hispanic identity in Qatar differ from your Hispanic identity in the United States?
That's a good question because I feel like us as Hispanics or Latinos, we don't see ourselves differently, or at least I don't, based on where we live. It's more to where your traditions and your spirit, how you feel and how you portray yourself in that place where you live.
The similarities that I've found here with the culture, I love the deference to elders, which is very big in our culture as well. There's a few key things. There's also there is some Arab influence in the food in Dominican Republic that I didn't realize until I got here, right?
So like you can bring your culture and your heritage with you where you live and kind of find the people to fill in that, I guess, similarity, you could say, and kind of share it with them.
My Hispanic here as opposed to back home in the U.S. I think it's just a network, right? Here I don't have a big network of Hispanic friends. In Miami, where I grew up, you know, everybody is right, Dominican or Cuban or Puerto Rican or South American, right? There's such a diversity there. So I do find it easier in some ways to be back home and to find the foods I want to eat and to listen to the songs that I want to listen to keep up with what's new in kind of the Latin culture.
With regard to terminology, how do you describe the use of Hispanic versus Latino/Latina or Latinx to others?
To me, the term Hispanic is historically aligning with people from Spain or people that speak Spanish. So Latino, Latina is a bit more inclusive, where it includes people from Latin America in general, so the Caribbean, Central America, South America, as well as Spanish-speaking people. So for Latinx, that's a new term that I'm not as familiar with, and I guess it's for people that don't identify with male or woman or men terms, or they want to be more inclusive in that regard.
Yeah, that's a complicated question. I would say, I think first off, like, people should be called whatever they want to be called. Hispanic generally means like of Spanish origin, so I think it's increasingly common that younger people, especially in the US, sort of move away from that term because, you know, they don't want to be associated with colonizers. And for a lot of people, like I know through the genetic testing, like I'm not really Spanish, I'm more like I have very few Spanish, very minimal Spanish heritage.
I think I always had as a right Hispanic. I always connected with Spanish speaking, right? I feel like the Latin spectrum of cultures is much wider than Hispanic, right? Hispanic, Spanish speaking, includes Spain.
So, although I did think it was interesting when I was in Mexico, people were like, well, obviously we're Spanish, like we come and there was a lot of pushback against Latino and Latina because it's just like kind of a new term. I mean, I think for me that does make more sense because it has a greater connection to being indigenous or from Latin America, but at the same time the gendered pronoun creates an issue for some people. I know a lot of people and in my own family and in Mexico were like, you can't have an X, you can't make up words.
But I associate that word with Spanish speaking, right? I associate the word Latin with a little bit more just breadth in terms of, right? It entails it has Brazil in Latin, right? They speak a Latin-based language. There's a lot of similarities with their culture in terms of Brazil, Venezuela, Colombia, right? They're neighboring countries. So I think Latino, Latina, Latin culture is a little wider. I think.
Like it's common now because the X is also really clunky in Spanish. People will do like instead of maestro, maestra, they'll do maestre, and people really didn't like that because it's a more conservative culture. I think again, to me, it's just I think people should be called what they want to be called, and if you want to be Latino, Latina, Chicano, or whatever, Argentinian American, whatever you want to be called is what you should be called.
Are there any expressions or sayings that you grew up with, hearing, that represent your culture in some sort of way? And why do they impact you?
Good question. I feel like I have, so many. Pa'lante, or para atrás ni para coger impulso, which means don't go backwards, not even to gain momentum. Like, it's always forward, right? Like, we move forward. And so it just talks about kind of the persistence of the culture and the persistence of the people.
How do you celebrate your heritage? What does that look like in your family?
With my current family, we celebrate just spending time together, making a big feast, eating, bonding, and pretty much a lot of love and care.
We celebrate Dia de los Muertos, which is the Day of the Dead in our family. We grew up building our altars and honoring our dead, because my mom said never forget the family, never forget who died and who was here before you, who taught you to make the things you know how to make today, and why you see them around the world.
Every spring there's a fiesta week, which includes celebrations of food and the Mexican American culture. It's filled with colors. There's a lot of parades. There are celebrations. There's an annual prince and princess of the celebration. So that's one thing, and it's something that the whole city comes together to reflect on. But also through food, through music, through some of the endearing phrases that we use for family members, all of that pulls me back home, and wherever we go around the world with those little things that I bring